My guests on Coastal Front today are looking to secure seats in the upcoming Vancouver municipal election as city councillors. I welcome Park Board Commissioner Stuart Mackinnon and Leslie Boldt, owner of Boldt Communications. In addition to teaching public school for over 30 years, Stuart has been a Park Board Commissioner since 2008. Throughout his terms, he has championed affordable recreation, clean and natural parks, reconciliation, and he's advocated for preparing our parks and recreation facilities for the impacts of climate change. Fellow candidate Leslie is passionate about public and community service. Prior to starting her own company, Leslie held senior positions with the BC government and led the public communications for the 2010 Winter Games. Protecting the environment and focusing on climate change are also priorities for Leslie, and it's evident in her previous work with the David Suzuki Foundation, Clean Energy Canada, Climate Smart, and more. To make things a bit more interactive on today's show, we have asked both Stuart and Leslie to each pick a topic that is important to them in this upcoming election. Leslie and Stuart, thank you very much for being on Coastal Front today as part of our election series.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks a lot. It's nice to be here.
Why don't we start with yourself, Leslie? Vision Vancouver, and choosing to run under this municipal election. Is this the first time you've decided to run for public office?
Yes, I've been involved in politics for 30 years. I know I don't look old enough, but I have. But this is the first time I've run as a candidate. So It's definitely a different experience for me. But I have been involved in municipal politics here in Vancouver for 20 years. So yeah.
Well, let's hear a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I made the decision to run for council during the pandemic. So that was a real pivotal decision point for me in terms of how those of us who have agency, who have the ability to show up in a different way, how we can do that. And so for me, I thought, I think I can play a different role in politics by running for office rather than supporting those that run for office. So that's sort of behind my personal decision. As far as Vision Vancouver and running in this election, it's really my strong view that the current city council lacks focus and ability to get things done. There's a fair amount of consensus from across the political landscape, I think, on that. And I think that Vision Vancouver and candidates like Stuart and I can help with that a little bit in terms of collaborating with other folks from other political parties, but also with each other to get things done at City Hall again.
Okay, Stuart, how about yourself?
So I'm a native Vancouverite, lived here for 20 years, was away for 20 years.
Okay.
And then when I came back, I made 3 commitments to myself. One was to get in touch with my faith. Second was to work with end-of-life care. And the third was to give back to my community. And when I looked around what I could do to give back to my community, I saw that, like a lot of kids in the 60s, rather tumultuous home, but parks and recreation were what kept me on the straight and narrow. And so I became a public space advocate and a natural space advocate so that the kids could have the kind of childhood that I had. I talk about it being almost magical in the parks and the swimming pools and the beaches.
Whereabouts in Vancouver did you grow up?
I grew up on the west side.
Okay.
So Dunbar Community Center, Memorial West Park, Jericho Beach, Spanish Banks.
Beautiful places.
Ride my bike down there. And so I got involved in that, and that inevitably led me to engage in politics.
Yeah.
And so I ran for Park Board in 2005, was elected when I ran again in 2008. 2012, the voters, never being wrong, gave me a vacation, but I came back in 2014 and again in 2018.
Stuart, you are now the second Park Board Commissioner to leave their former party. One was a COPE member who's now moved to, I believe, yourselves to Vision.
Mm-hmm.
And
John
then
Irwin, yeah.
John Irwin, and now yourself. Can you maybe explain for the listeners who had maybe voted for you last time under the Green banner, why you've chosen to go over to Vision from Green?
I guess the short answer is I wanted to be in a big tent party, an organization that reaches right across the city, right across political lines, one that has a history of bringing people together and getting things done. And for me, that was Vision Vancouver. Look, I have the greatest respect for the Green Party and my colleagues. my former colleagues in the Green Party. There are not, I don't think, two people I respect more than Camille Dumont and Dave Demers, who are my colleagues on Park Board. Not only do I respect them politically, we've become friends, and I can say that we've grown to love each other. But for me, I needed to, when I was making the leap into City Council, I wanted to be with a group who share the same values as me, but can appeal to a much broader base. And then candidates like Leslie, Kishon Roy, Hanye Barzagari, who are our fellow candidates at council, just blow me away in their passion, their background, and their knowledge.
Okay.
So it was really, really an easy
decision for you.
Yeah.
Okay, good answer.
Thanks, Stuart.
Well, let's maybe pivot to talking about Vision Vancouver.
Sure.
If viewers who were to Google Vision Vancouver today, actually the first description that comes up is it says that Vision Vancouver is a green liberal municipal political party. I don't know if that was necessarily what would have come up when we Googled it back when Gregor Robertson first led the Vision Party to success quite a few years ago. So can you maybe start by explaining what that term, a green liberal municipal political party, means?
Well, I don't think I wrote that either, but I think what it means is that, as Stuart mentioned, and I might have mentioned it also, we're a big tent party.
Uh-huh.
So the members of our party aren't from one political background. We've got federal liberals, we've got provincial liberals, we've got New Democrats, we've got Greens, obviously, people that come from different backgrounds, but we share values. So that's kind of what brings us together as a political party. And we were formed years ago. So I guess our first election was when Jim Green ran for mayor back in the mid-2000s.
Okay.
As that sort of progressive coalition that would really took the place of COPE. Which Larry Campbell was elected under, if you'll remember, back in the day, back in 2002. So the reasons that we got together, that we got the band together in the first place, are still there.
Okay.
We shared values, shared desire to make a difference in this city on the things that matter to us. And we think that that's still needed in this city.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good. Well, and thanks for that little bit of history lesson on COPE and Vision. Most people associate former Mayor Gregor Robertson with Vision Vancouver. How has Vision changed since Gregor left office and left the leadership of Vision Vancouver in 2018?
You know, Gregor's influence still impacts the party. The incredible years that he led Vancouver still impacts. The really good things that are happening in Vancouver today, I believe, happened under the Vision Vancouver leadership from 2008 to 2018. But people are going to ask, well, what happened to Vision in 18 and why are you with them? Well, governments get tired, they get stale, they need to be renewed. I still think there was lots of energy and lots of great ideas coming out, but the electorate, as I said before, the electorate's never wrong. They said it's time that we had a little break. I think what we've seen in the last 4 years, that this hasn't been such a great break. I think we've had, I'm not going to mince words here, I think we've had quite a dysfunctional city council.
Yeah.
That's not...
I think most people will tend to agree with that.
I agree.
Including all of our mayoral candidates who've been on before you here.
And so... people are looking for stability. They're looking for people who have good ideas, who know how to get those ideas done. And I think they're going to look to Vision Vancouver because we have the experience.
Yeah, and we do have a track record of bold action.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone would agree with everything that Vision Vancouver did in the past, but when you look at leadership on something like the Green City Action Plan, which Gregor Robertson and former City Councillor Andrea Reimer spearheaded, really positioned Vancouver as an international leader in sustainability and sustainable action. we'd really like to bring a little bit of that vibe back to this city. We know that this council has tried. There's some good people on this council that have tried to make progress on the climate emergency, but they've really struggled. This council has struggled to work together. And as you say, this is lots and lots of people are saying the same thing.
But going back to my question, how is Vision 2022 different than Vision from 2018? I mean, maybe the answer is it isn't, and that's what voters should know. Like, how is it different? Or is it really, hey, all the great things that we were in 2018 and before, that's what we are today?
Well, that's part of it for sure. But we're a new crew, you know. Okay. We're all candidates who are running for city council with Vision for the first time.
Okay.
We're bringing new ideas, and also some of the challenges that we're dealing with. You know, we've just been through a pandemic. You know,
sure.
The climate emergency is closer to our front doors than it has ever been.
Yeah.
We've got systemic racism. We've got a lot of stuff, to use a euphemism, to deal with in this city.
Okay.
And so we want to bring a bit of a fresh approach, but also, again, and you're going to hear this from us over and over again, a desire to collaborate and to work together to get things done. We can't delay anymore.
Okay.
I say that my history with the park board, working with multiple parties, my history is one of collaboration. I've been chair of the board for 3 terms, and we've had very successful in those times because my ability and the ability of others to work together. And I think that's what's not happening at City Council right now.
Okay.
I look at, when staff reports come back, and there are a multitude of amendments that come out. And, the way I see it and why we don't do that at Park Board is if you give staff good direction, if you're following what they're doing as they're getting that direction, and you're looking at the public input, the report that they're going to bring back will reflect the views of what came out there.
Sure.
But that's not happening right now. So, we don't need a multitude of on-the-fly amendments. What we need is good direction.
Yeah.
Good direction, and then staff bringing back what we ask them to bring back, and things move along.
And that leadership starts at the top, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into my next question, which is why is Vision not running a mayoral candidate?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think that we're in a process of rebuilding right now. Let's be candid, shall we? Right? Our party is rebuilding, and I think we thought it was important to be ambitious, but not too ambitious.
Okay.
There's a dense field running for mayor right now, but again, we're in a phase of rebuilding. So we've got a really great slate of candidates, but as you'll see, we're not running full slates for council, school board, or park board either. So, we're rebuilding now. We've got some ambitions to work together with other folks, and we'll see what the future brings.
Okay, great. What do you think about the current list of mayoral candidates?
Well, I did actually run into Ken Sim on the way here, and we had a nice chat. I think that actually most of the candidates are pretty solid. I don't say I agree with them politically on a lot of all of the issues, or even many of the issues, but it's an interesting crew. Okay.
And it's interesting. I mean, we run under a system of civic government in Canada where it's not the mayor isn't the big cheese. The mayor is one of, it's a mayor and 10 councillors, and their vote is as equal. Yeah. They are the face of the city. They tend to put an agenda together to put out, so there is some leadership there. But they are not the be-all and end-all the way they are in some cities, like in the United States.
Right.
So I think I can work with anyone who will become mayor. I'd like to think I will be. As Leslie says, some of them don't share my values, my point of view. Yeah. But that's been the same at Park Board. Sure. That's the same in any government. And what we like to say at Park Board, and it's the same at City Council, we sit at a round table. We don't sit across from each other. It's not parliamentary in its government in opposition. We sit in a circle for a reason, because we need to get together. We need to work together.
Yeah. Okay, good answers. How many candidates are currently slated to run for Vision under city council?
4.
You've got 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there are 10 elected city councilors and then the mayor. So if you were unable to form a majority, and 4 would get you pretty close to being a majority, won't get you a full majority, but if you weren't able to have, let's say it's just the 2 of you that end up getting elected, which of the other parties do you feel would best work with Vision?
I'm going to be candid with you. I think that there are people who are on city council right now from various parties that I could work with, that I have good relationships with. I've worked in the nonprofit sector with Lisa Dominato before she was elected to council. Christine Boyle is very impressive. I think we're aligned on a lot of the issues from one city. So I've seen some impressive work on city council from folks, and even Kennedy Stuart has introduced some initiatives that I think Vision would support, like the Making Home strategy or streamlining rentals, extending the empty home tax. These are all things where we share values. So you're going to get a theme here from us today, which is we're really willing to work with anybody who shares our values on the key issues. There's going to be differences of opinion, and we might actually argue about some of those issues. But if we can come to a consensus on the things that are important to us, housing, climate action, recovery from this pandemic, small business recovery, if we can come to some consensus on some of these and other issues, we're willing to work with anybody.
Yeah.
And I really mean that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I mean, my track record is very clear on Park Board. There are political divisions there, but, about 9 out of 10 votes are unanimous.
Is that right?
It doesn't matter whether you're from COPE or the Greens or the NPA or Vision. We're all going in the same direction. And I'm going to say this, anybody who stands for public office is doing so because they love their community and they want it to be better. We might have a different idea of what better means. But I think if you take that attitude that the person sitting next to me or across from me isn't there to disrupt, isn't there to destroy, but is working in the best way that they believe, then you can find commonalities and you can work with everybody.
And having said that, though, I will say that I'll fight, when it's necessary on the things that are important to us. And if there's somebody else at that council table that doesn't share the values, we're going to work together and work really, really hard and say what needs to be said in order to get stuff done.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on that one, I think it's really important to establish right now that reconciliation within the city is a fundamental value of Vision Vancouver.
Okay.
And it's not something that we will
compromise on.
Right.
And if there are candidates out there that don't believe in reconciliation, that don't believe that reconciliation is an urban civic issue,
that's right,
then we won't be agreeing with them.
Okay, we're going to now go to the topics that you've chosen. We're going to start with yours, Stuart, climate change. As a longtime Park Board commissioner, but now looking to run for city council, can you tell me where the city has succeeded and where it has failed with regards to climate change initiatives?
So first of all, I want to acknowledge that through the leadership of Vision Vancouver councils, Vancouver is a leader in climate preparedness. Through initiatives and directions to staff, Vancouver is moving in the right direction. But as the past year has shown us, we have to start moving a lot faster. When Vision came into governance in 2008, they brought some phenomenal initiatives. Leslie has mentioned the Greenest City Action Plan being one of the most important. But the world today is very, very different than it was in 2008. The heat dome last summer showed us how vulnerable some of our population is. We don't have by nature buildings that are air conditioned. We ran out of fans. It was very, very serious, and some of our more vulnerable population very tragically passed away. So on climate change, I think, really what we have to look at is the Greenest City Action Plan and the successes of that and how we need to carry on. Okay. So green buildings, making them better and not putting out the greenhouse gases that they were before. green transportation.
Yeah.
This is huge for us.
The Broadway subway.
The Broadway subway. You might read it in some of the mainstream media and think that, this is controversial, but it's not. You talk to the vast majority of Vancouverites, and they'll tell you that walking, cycling, these are the things that we need to move to. We need to get more cars off of the roads, and this is what Vision Vancouver's past and future is looking like. Food waste. We're doing really, really well on food waste. We've got the green bin program. So we're no longer putting these into our garbage dump where they're creating greenhouse gases. We're actually repurposing them. So that's terrific. Recycling. New parks. People think, well, Stuart, you're just saying that because you're a park commissioner, but new parks are really, really important. These are places that are generally cooler in the city than other places. And the thing that I'm particularly proud of, we've planted more than 100,000 new trees. And we know that, planting trees isn't going to solve our problem, but it's one of the tools that we can use to cool, to take greenhouse gases out.
Okay.
So these are things we need to be doing, but we need to do a lot more.
Okay.
I would also add that I am actually supportive of the climate emergency plan that the current city council has, but they've really struggled to implement it. So this really gets back to the fact that this council struggles to work together.
Right.
And so we need a council that's committed to getting things done.
But one of the things that people forget is that the Port of Vancouver is the economic engine of not only Vancouver, but of Canada. And climate change and sea level rise is going to have a tremendous impact on the Port of Vancouver. So we need to be working with the federal government, provincial government, and our economic partners on this.
Stuart, is Vancouver ready for a climate emergency?
I would probably say no.
Okay.
We saw that with the seawall and what happened last winter and how destructive it was. It was a surprise to everyone.
Okay, so if your answer is no, what are the steps you would take on City Council to better prepare ourselves for a climate emergency?
So right now we're capital planning. So these are the dollars that we're going to be putting into the infrastructure in Vancouver. I want to see a lot more dollars being committed to climate emergency infrastructure. We need to be not necessarily shoring up, because one of the things we've learned is that a seawall is not very sustainable when it comes to storms. It's just a big wall and that's it. So
and the ocean's powerful.
It sure is, as we saw. And so what we need to be doing is thinking outside the box. One of the difficulties we have is people love what they have, and they love to think back to what they had as their kids or in their younger years. And a lot of the infrastructure we have today has always been there, quote unquote, for the people who are here. And we may have to change some of that infrastructure.
Right.
The pier.
Can you give some examples?
Yeah, the pier at Jericho.
Okay.
Very loved. It was wiped out.
Right.
Do we need to spend $20 million rebuilding that pier? These are some of the
That's a really good point.
Tough questions that we're going to have to ask, not just of city councillors, but of the population itself.
The community, yeah.
I call it the cup fiasco, but there was a initiative put forward by council and staff earlier this year where we all know about the 25-cent cup tax, right? I call it cup fiasco. So my question is, what is your take on Vancouver introducing this cup tax? Does it make sense from a climate change perspective when surrounding municipalities don't have this tax? And do you think it's a good policy considering, in my opinion, the three largest cup producers in Vancouver are Starbucks, McDonald's, and Tim Hortons, and it's kind of become just a bit of a cash grab for them. So what's your take on the cup, what I call the cup fiasco?
So first of all, we have to recognize that this has impacted vulnerable people far more than anyone else. 25 cents extra on a Tim Hortons coffee isn't going to make any difference to me.
Right.
But there were lots of folks where it really is going
Very
to make
good
a
point.
difference. You have to start somewhere. And I think that this was a policy that had lots of good intention. I'm not sure that it was necessarily thought out completely.
Yeah.
We need to stop being this disposable society. I love the idea that now nobody seems to mind that they don't have plastic bags at the grocery stores anymore. We're back to paper bags, which is kind of nice, or everyone brings their own.
Yeah.
Can we get to the point where everyone brings their own cup to Starbucks? Well, first of all, you have to ask, will Starbucks, McDonald's, Tim Hortons use those cups? During the pandemic, it was really hard. Nobody wanted to touch those sorts of things. Yeah. So I think it was a good idea. I'm not sure that it has been implemented.
Would you make changes to it?
I certainly would.
Okay. My last question, it's not exactly related to climate change, but I think it's a very important question for you, Stuart, considering your advocacy and your time spent on the park board. Mayoral candidate Ken Sim has said he wants to abolish the park board. What could this potentially mean for the city?
Well, first of all, I'd say good luck to him. The park board is part of the city charter. And in order for him to make a change to the city charter, he's got to go to Victoria. We've got things in the city charter that have been sitting on the drawing board for years and years. I don't think this is going to be a priority for the city council. But I also think it's incredibly short-sighted. The park board was formed 2 years after the city of Vancouver. It was formed because there was this huge woodlot on the West End that the federal government was saving in case they needed to go to war and they needed wood for ships. By 1888, they realized they didn't need those anymore. And so they offered this place to the city on a 100-year lease for $1. And the city councilors, in their infinite wisdom at that time, said, we don't have the ability to look after this huge space. We've got a city to build. We'll create a park board. And of course, this area was Stanley Park. But because they made that fundamental decision and left trees, parks, gardens to a separate entity, I think is why we're such a beautiful city, why we're such a green city, and why our recreation and park system are renowned throughout the world. So very short-sighted to think that they can do that, and very short-sighted to think they would want to do it.
All right, we're going to pivot to housing. Leslie, Vancouver City Council is expected to decide on the Broadway plan today, June the 9th. What are your thoughts on this plan as it currently presented? If you were on City Council today, voting today, would you approve it as it's written today?
Yes. I'll just start there.
Sure.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
I would support the Broadway plan as currently developed. Unlike a lot of folks who live in this city, I actually have participated in the public engagement process on the Broadway plan for the last few years. Okay. I live in the Broadway plan area as well, so it's personal. Having said that, I do support the recommended amendments to increase tenant protections in the Broadway plan area that have been recommended by Mayor Stuart, but also, I was talking to Pete Fry the other day, and he wants to see stronger tenant protections as well. So I expect those amendments to be introduced today, and I support them as well. Okay. So, yeah.
Should this vote not maybe be reserved till after the election, since it's so nearby, so close to election time?
I know that some folks feel that's the case, and we certainly heard a lot of people in the public hearings saying that. My view is the Broadway plan is long overdue, and that the subway is already being built. Yes. Ideally, you would have a plan before you started to build the subway. There are a number of reasons for the delay, but the planning started 4 years ago. The pandemic definitely played in the role in the delay of this plan, but it's already been delayed for too long. We can't wait another year to decide the future of our city along the Broadway corridor as the subway is being built. So, no, I'm not one of those people that wants to delay the decision further.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, you've kind of already highlighted your view on this, but Kennedy Stuart claims he wants to protect tenants who will be displaced by the Broadway plan. Yeah. He's promising compensation and the right to return to a replacement building at rents that are at or below what those tenants had been paying previously. In your opinion, is any of this actually possible? Number one. Number two, how do you get developers to agree, and who's going to provide the compensation?
Those are all really great questions.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take the first one on first. Will it work? I think is what you're asking. Those tenant protections.
Are these
will
possible?
They protect?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I can speak from my own personal experience. I've lived in the Broadway Plan area, also known as South Granville, for 20 years. I was evicted from my home of 13 years 4 years ago in this area. And I didn't have a leg to stand on. I was rent evicted, essentially. My landlord renovated my unit and is now renting it out for twice what I was paying for it. If the protections that were in the Broadway Plan are proposed by city councilors and the mayor were in place today, I would have had a lot more in my defense. I would have had an option to come back to my home. And I would have had an option to have somewhere to live in the interim, But as it stood, I was out on the open market in 2 months, and it was an incredibly stressful experience for me. So, but I think your point is well taken. I'm reading between the lines. There's an issue of enforceability, so around these protections. But I actually feel they're legitimate, and they enhance the protections for tenants that are already in place. That's a really important thing to remember. It's just taking them to the next level.
Yeah, well, the question is kind of like,
absolutely,
either the developers have to, they have to price it into their models.
Absolutely.
And, will you scare away developers under that policy? And secondly, like, who provides this compensation? I mean, using your own personal example, if you were like, who would have paid?
Developers, and you may be all aware of this, already do provide compensation for people who are displaced when they're going to demolish buildings.
Right.
And there's depending on the circumstances, various rights that tenants have around returning to the new building and that sort of thing. So buildings are still being built with those policies in place. I mean, let's be candid. The economics of a building right now are tough, right? We've got supply chain issues. We've got increasing costs. We've got inflation, right? So there's going to have to be a density trade-off in order to make this this model possible. It's not something that I personally have a problem with. I mean, not that it depends on what part of the Broadway Plan area you're talking about. If you're around a transit station, let's look at some height. And let's look at a lot more rental housing. Let's look at non-profit partnerships. Let's look at federal and provincial investments to reduce the cost of building new housing. There's lots of creative ideas. But I do believe we need to work with private builders as well as the public sector to make this all happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out, because lots of people seem to be a little bit confused on that. This is a 30-year plan. This is not like all the people in the Broadway corridor are going to be displaced overnight. This is a long-term plan.
Yeah. To replace aging housing stock that needs to be replaced regardless.
Yes. Right.
So let's do it right. Let's protect tenants. Let's work with the community to have neighborhoods that we all want to live in.
Lots of people moving here, that's for sure. Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, you mentioned housing stock.
Yeah.
There's different types of housing stock. Yes. What should the city's priorities be around rental properties versus, say, condominiums as a contrast?
Yeah, I think what you're going to hear from me and from Vision, I think, is we definitely need a lot more rental housing in this city. As you were probably aware, there was literally almost no rental construction happening 20 years ago. It was a very much favored condominium development. And then we were all living in this rental housing stock that was built 60, 70, 80 years ago. My present company included. I'm a renter, obviously, in the city. And so we're behind, so some folks make arguments, well, we're building at the pace of population growth, but that doesn't acknowledge the fact that we're tens of thousands of units behind where we should be. And that's what's creating the housing crisis. Well, there's many things causing the housing crisis, but it's certainly one of them. But
so do you believe it's partly just a simple supply-demand equation?
It's not simple, but supply is definitely part of the solution.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need more supply, but it needs to be the right supply. And folks talk about this all the time. we definitely need to encourage more co-ops. I mean, Vision was spearheaded the first co-op in decades or years anyway. In 2010, when with the co-op at Olympic Village, it was the first co-op in the city in years. So we definitely can. There's room to grow that sector. The nonprofit sector, they'll tell you right now. If you had Jill Hatke from the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, she'd tell you they have projects ready to go. They just need support and funding. You're definitely going to hear us talking about nonprofit, cooperative, public housing, but yes, market rental as well. I rent market rental myself, and we need housing for people across the continuum.
Yeah. Okay, and it's really important. It's not just any kind of rental either. I mean, we don't want to just build studios and one bedroom. We need rental for families.
For families,
we want people to stay in Vancouver. There is an exodus of children in our city. Our schools are losing enrollment not because people don't want to live in Vancouver.
They can't afford to live here.
They can't afford to, and if they find something, it's not the right size.
Yes.
Do you want to live in a neighborhood without children? I don't.
I sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
They bring life.
I know,
children.
I mean, one of my best employees, his wife and he moved to East Vancouver and they were in Olympic Village,
right?
But they have 2 children.
Yeah.
And they can't really, the boys are getting older. Having
Needed
a
more
2-bedroom doesn't really work for them.
That is the missing middle.
Yeah.
Lately, the missing middle has been used to describe mid-rise buildings, but no, the missing middle is housing for people in middle incomes, families. Mm-hmm. There's nothing between a studio and a $2 million single family home.
Yeah.
We need more options for those folks.
Okay, well said. Leslie, the idea of affordability in Vancouver, is it just a concept that the public continues to be fed as an idea, or is there actually still real opportunities for affordability in Vancouver?
Well, of course. I don't think I'd be running for city council if I didn't think there were opportunities to make the city more affordable. Mm-hmm. It's going to require bold action. I think it's something that politicians struggle with, especially around election time.
Well, they all say it.
They all say it.
Elect me and I'll give you affordable housing.
I agree. But I don't think we have time to dilly-dally anymore. And this is the thing, that's one of the reasons I'm running for city council. So what can we do to increase affordability in the city? Well, obviously, housing is a huge part of that equation. But there are other things too. Childcare, and the BC government going to give them props, and the feds, they're in on the $10 a day daycare initiative. That hugely reduces the cost for families and makes life more affordable. Food security, Stuart mentioned that earlier. Food is going through the roof right now in terms of inflation. What can we do to source more of our food locally, to support local farmers, invest in the future of food in the city? I know it sounds a little corny, but it's absolutely true.
I love the Vancouver Farmers Market. People don't realize it or underestimate.
And it's so essential. It's so essential for folks. I live in somewhat of a food desert in my neighborhood. There used to be more green grocers on Granville Street near where I live. Not anymore. It's upscale furniture stores now. And so I have to walk to go grocery shopping now. So there's so many other things that we can do around affordability. It's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we could do in that area. It's
a long conversation. I mean,
it's a longer conversation.
So let me finish this one question for you, because you're the one that chose housing as your topic, Leslie. So let's say
I'm ready.
Elections
Andrew.
tomorrow. Okay. Elections tomorrow. You get elected. Yeah. The next day you're at city council, and you're being given the opportunity to present something to council for the first time on housing, something tangible, something real. Give the listeners a flavor of what you would do.
Victoria City Council did something very exciting a few weeks ago. They basically took away the requirement for rezoning public hearing for public housing, cooperative housing, or nonprofit housing.
Oh, interesting.
That's going to accelerate the process by, I think they estimated about 9 months. So that's a really now it's going to be a bit more challenging in Vancouver because we're going to need some amendments to the Vancouver Charter in order to make that possible. But it's possible. And I think we have a provincial government right now under the leadership of Housing Minister David Eby that will be supportive of an initiative like that and others like that. But that's one thing we can do now. Other municipalities have done it. The precedent has been set to accelerate that process and get some of this housing built faster. That is a huge issue in this city.
Okay,
I
great.
think it's really interesting in the city of Vancouver and many neighborhoods that if you have a single family dwelling and you want to rebuild it, there's no public process. You put in your permit. But if you want to change that to multiple, then you have to go through an entire process.
Yes.
This doesn't make any sense at all. We need housing. We need to change our neighborhoods. The day for me, and the day of the 60-foot front single-family dwelling, it has to be over. We need to be building. We need to be offering a variety of housing. And one of the things...
But are you suggesting, Stuart, that you would... this idea, you would extend it to all types of rezonings? You would
I think that's a topic that we need to have a discussion about.
To be devil's advocate, if you don't have any kind of public hearing or public discussion about a rezoning or reapplication, where's the checks and balances then?
I actually am not saying that we shouldn't have a public process around these projects. And I'm talking about the requirement for a public hearing. So absolutely public engagement. I actually would, this is a much bigger topic actually, but I'd like to look at a renewal or a reform of the public hearing system. Because in Vancouver, what happens is public hearing is what I call a showcase showdown, where it becomes this, and you're seeing that with the Broadway plan right now, this dramatic us versus them, contentious, all point, I'll drag it out battle for supremacy. It's not good. It's not a good way to make public policy. So what I would like to see is more contact points between the public and city council earlier in the process. Some other municipalities do this as well, so that people...
This is a really good point. Developers we talk to, it's one of the biggest complaints about City Vancouver. They can't get any engagement ahead of time.
That's right. So if you build that in ahead of time, by the time it gets to city council, whether you have a public hearing or not, I gave you an idea. But for those projects where public hearings continue, you have community support and consensus before it ever gets to council for final decision.
And let's look at the way our process works now. You have to be available during the day. You have to be available for 2, 3, 4, 5 days to come and speak to city council. Well, that's only a small subset of the city that's available to do that. That's not a fair
It's not
system.
accessible to everybody.
Okay, we're going to now jump to the third topic. Financial accountability. Now, in Gregor Robertson's first year as mayor, he spent $128,000 in discretionary expenses. When he left as mayor in 2018, that amount had ballooned to $611,000. And that wasn't even a full year in his last year. What are your thoughts, and either you can answer this, what are your thoughts on the mayor's discretionary fund? Would you be in favor of keeping it, slashing it, or dividing it amongst city council?
I'm old enough to remember when the mayor had 2 staff. Maybe you are too. I don't know. When Larry Campbell was elected mayor of Vancouver, they had two political staff, 2 executive assistants, and then administrative staff. So I think a strong argument can be made, regardless of who is elected mayor in October, that the mayor's office probably needs more than 2 people to support them and the work of serving the public. So I would say to you, I support an office budget for the mayor's office. And again, regardless of who is elected to office.
So Mayor Kennedy Stuart, as of December 31st of last year, has 6 paid political staff. In addition to, I think it was another 4,
like administrative staff.
4 staff that you're referring to, Leslie.
Right.
So I can see that, but there's 6 paid staff, which at their combined salaries last year were $600,000. Do you think that's appropriate use of public funds?
Well, it depends on what they're using the money for. I mean,
well, they're political staff.
Political staff, administrative staff. The administrative staff are the receptionists, the people who are doing the documentation and things like that. There is lots of things that happen in the mayor's office. So I would want to know a breakdown of what all of that is. There is oversight. Okay, I'm not defending this because I don't know what this run, but there is oversight with City Council. There is oversight with the auditor on what they're spending. Just to tell you about City Council, I'd like to see some of that budget go to City Councillors. They have very, very little staffing allotment. They have.
This is a really good point. That's why I asked the question.
I'm chair of the park board. I have no administrative support other than meeting support, so support when we have meetings. I receive 500, 600, sometimes 700 emails in a week. I'm responsible for doing that. I have to spend all of my time, reading the staff reports, making my notes, and most commissioners have another job. Now, City Council is pretty much a full-time job, but they don't just do City Council. They're on other committees, Metro, Transit, whatnot. They do need support. There's no question the mayor's office does need support. My question is, how is it being spent, and is it good value for dollar?
Right. Roughly about $30,000 a year is what is allocated to each city councillor for discretionary expenses. By contrast, about $800,000 a year. So all the city councillors combined, they have less than $100,000 to share for. We know they each get sort of 2 councillors for 1 assistant, because that's how they got to really stretch those dollars. So would you be in favor of taking this discretionary amount that the mayor is currently getting and reducing it and then reallocating it to the city councillors?
Again, I'd like to see what the mayor is spending it on.
Okay.
If there are things that I don't agree with, does the mayor's office need to do individual polling? Is that something, and how much does that cost?
Right.
But but the city does need to do polling. We need to know what the people in Vancouver are thinking about, and there's various ways of doing that. Okay. So I need to know what that is being spent on. We talk about being a living wage employer. $30,000 per counselor. You're not paying anyone a living wage.
You certainly aren't. No.
And so we need to get our priorities right.
Yeah. Okay, where would you like to see the city spend more of its money or investing its money?
I would definitely, echoing what Stuart said earlier, I think climate preparedness. He talked about the waterfront, absolutely, and sea level rise, but also things like electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Right. There's such an explosion in electric vehicles, and really just isn't the adequate infrastructure.
Yeah. There's not a huge infrastructure that we need to build. We have infrastructure on every single street that has electrical charges on them, and they're called lamp stands.
Right.
And they could be rewired, to bring more in so that we can have charging stations.
Yeah.
Certainly infrastructure, coastal infrastructure, our sewer infrastructure, we need to be doing that. I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that we have a 1% extra tax on our taxes that go for infrastructure. I bet that you would ask, dollars to donuts, as my old dad used to say, that you could ask people if you would you be in favor of making that 2% in order to build better infrastructure?
Right.
We need to be investing in that.
And just to build on that, one more thing, I think we could invest in arts and culture infrastructure as well.
Okay.
I think there's a real deficit, a real struggle for affordable art space in the city as well. So I just wanted to put that plug in for arts and culture.
Yeah, and what's the point of life without art?
Yeah. Because so many of our listeners at Coastal Front, like myself, want to continue to see government be accountable with their finances. My last question is, how will the Vision Party save municipal taxpayers tax dollars? If you look at the amount of increases we've seen in the last 3 years, it's been 25% increase in property taxes for people that own homes, condos, townhouses, single family homes. So how is your party going to be able to save taxpayers?
I'll just start off by saying it's been an expensive couple of years for pretty obvious reasons. We've been living through a global pandemic, and we've had to roll with a lot of change, so I'm not going to hold that against the city council. I'll hold other things against them, but not this. But now we need to turn our attention towards the future. I'm sure you agree. I think it starts at the top with council and with senior staff leadership as well. In my view, there's a lot of city practices and processes that increase costs, and not just for developers, but for government, for businesses, for individuals. So again, not just talking about development permitting processes, but that is a big one.
Okay.
I think there is a lot of projects get gummed up for years in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also talking about the public engagement process, which we've also already talked about.
Yeah.
These long, drawn-out processes. They're expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people don't even know where they start and where they finish. And the lack of speed with which this council makes decisions. We've got this situation now where they're making massive decisions like this month, because it takes them so long to get through their agenda.
Right.
So there's you're hearing a lot about efficiency and also these spontaneous new ideas that councillors have to, amendment or a new motion to add this or that. They've got the staff madly running in all directions. So for me, I think a lot can be achieved in terms of city expenditures with efficiency and also with strong leadership.
Okay, good answer. Stuart?
I just want to put a caveat on that. Yeah. Everything costs more. And so much of our infrastructure was built 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
It has reached the end of its life. It's not cheap to replace. And
we have to do it.
And we don't have a choice.
No, we don't have a choice.
We have to do it.
Right.
So if we want to live in Vancouver, and if we want to keep the quality of life that we've come to expect, then we're going to have to pay for it. And this is the generation that is going to have to pay for renewal. It's just the luck of the draw on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
Vision Vancouver. People listen to this podcast. Let's say they really like what they're hearing. How do they get involved, and what are you looking for people to do to help you two and the rest of your colleagues get elected in October?
We've already mentioned a couple of times today that we have a process coming up. If you want to be part of the future, crafting the future of the city, join Vision Vancouver, votevision.ca, become a member.
That's the website,
votevision.ca.
Okay.
Sign up, become a member. It's just $10, so it's easy to get involved. Come to our policy conferences, come to our community meetings, be part of this policy development process for the city that you want to help create. There's going to be lots to do over the summertime. We're going to have lots of get-togethers. We're going to have pub nights. We're going to talk to folks and listen to what they have to say. And of course, there'll be lots of volunteer opportunities in September and October as we compete for your votes.
Okay. Leslie Boldt, Stuart Mackinnon, two of our star candidates for Vision Vancouver. Thank you for being on Coastal Front today.
Thank you, Andrew.
Best of luck in October.
Thanks for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you.